Hello everyone. Hi, my name is Yolanda Panto. I'm a pastor. I live and work in Jakarta, Indonesia, and I'm a friend of Professor Rima Nasrallah. So it's my pleasure to be able to give you this talk about my personal calling within my professional calling, and I hope what I'm going to share with you can be a blessing, maybe an inspiration and encouragement for you, or just material for your discussion. So today I'm going to talk about minimalism as my personal lifestyle, but also as a theological and spiritual stand in today's modern world. I suppose many of you have known what minimalism is, whether it as a design concept, a philosophy, or a lifestyle. And in the few last years, the word minimalism has been the it trend. If you search for minimalism in YouTube or Instagram or just on Google, probably you will be flooded with so many links, so many websites, so many YouTubers or Instagrammers claiming to be minimalists and promote the lifestyle. But these recent years, not so many, especially with the pandemic. Apparently, with the pandemic, people tend to hoard more stuff because we have to stay at home. And also we are in this surviving mode, like this is the apocalypse time, and we have to stay at home, so we acquire stuff to comfort us, to cook at home, yeah, we start baking, we start cooking, we start decorating our house, because we come into this nesting and hoarding setting of our mental state. So I think the pandemic has a lot to do with the trend of minimalist lifestyle being declining, but it's also good because then minimalism is no longer about a hipster thing, it's no longer about a trend, and people who commit to this lifestyle really understand what it means, the philosophy and the advantage of it. As for myself, I joined the wave. So I joined the wave. I joined minimalism the wagon when it was still very new, especially in my country. To prove this to you is like my Instagram account and Twitter account name is Eco Minimalist. You cannot have this name now because there will be a lot of minimalist based accounts. So I even got offer people who wants to buy my username because it was not really it was not that booming minimalism at the time. That's why I can have that name for both my Twitter and Instagram account, and follow me on those accounts, please. So but I also joined the wave, the trend, where when minimalism become the lesser trend, or like people start to be quiet about minimalist lifestyle during the pandemic time. I have bought an air fryer and hand mixer during the lockdown in aspiration to start baking and cooking better at home. But so that's a mistake I have to admit, because I still use the air fryer but not so much on the hand mixer. But personally, spiritually, deep down in my heart, I also long for the day when I can just pack all my stuffs in a 1 or 2 suitcases, and then just live very simple, and I can just give away most of my earthly possession, because sometimes I have these clothes that I have to have in my wardrobe because of my work, because I have to dress a certain way for certain occasions. So deep down in my heart, I long to live a very simple life, to have just the basic of my necessities, and it also will be good for my financial independence goal. So back to my eco-minimalism. So my minimalism is not only about living simple, but it's also about simple and sustainable living. So basically, I come from these two concerns of mine: the ecological crisis that we are globally facing in rapid pace, and also the second one is the materialistic lifestyle that has intoxicated many people throughout the globe. these two concerns, I believe are given to me by God since my younger years. When I was a teenager, I was already very disturbed with the issue of excessive use of plastic, the waste people produce on their daily life, and the lack of responsibility in tackling these trash problems. And later on, as I grow older, as I becoming a young adult, I also struggle with the fancy lifestyle that has been a part of my peers in their identity shaping, also my identity shaping. And when I studied theology for my bachelor, I was also drawn to the idea of liberation theology and preference for the poor. It was something very foreign for me, those ideas, but also very appealing, because like I just felt like that's what we should do as disciple of Christ. We should like live a very simple life so we can do more and we can be as equal as possible. But I live in a society that materialistic possession, your economic status, your social status plays a very important role. So it is really hard for me to live by these interesting ideas, theologies, concepts. It's very hard for me to put it into practice, especially with my social setting at that time. And I found when I came to TC, the TC community in France, and I stayed there for 3 months, I learned and I found voluntary simplicity as a redeeming answer. So it's not something that is too confrontative, and it's something like you don't disturb anyone with this voluntary simplicity. But I was still very young at that time, so when I returned from this community, I start to lose the feeling, the understanding again. Only 10 years later, after my stay in Tese, I found minimalism as a lifestyle, which has become an answer to this struggle, to this concern of mine about like ecological issues, environmental irreversible destruction, and also this lavish lifestyle that is promoted on media, and like be the aspiration of my peers, of my friends, of my family. So yeah, I stumbled upon this idea of minimalist lifestyle, and it was not something philosophical, it was not something theological, it was an answer for design interior ideas. At the time, I was moving from a 2-bedroom house to 1-bedroom apartment, so I really had I was confused how to bring my dining table, my study desk, my TV console, and like all these stuffs, which is not very a lot. I mean, like in compared to many people, it's really nothing. But like from 2 bedrooms house to 1 bedroom apartment, it's really like I have to downsize. So I googled what to do, any decoration ideas, and I found about this author Francine J. She's a minimalist, and she said like we just ditch the whole TV, like we don't watch TV anymore. And I was like, yeah, that's true. I did not watch TV that much at the time. I mean, like most of the time I am glued to my laptop. So yeah, so that's from one side to another. With the algorithm, I found many blogs about minimalist lifestyle, and it gives me the confidence in choosing a life, to live a simple life. And it's like it's because like to live a simple life is actually a privilege. It's something out of your freedom, not because you have to or you cannot afford things, but because you want to, and because you don't care about what people think of you. Like this kind of I know this kind of like superficial societal confidence. In at the same time, it means that you still need validation from others, because you don't care about what other thinks, because it's still a validation for you. But like at the time, it becomes an answer for me. So, and also personally, a year before that, my mom has just passed away, and I was the one who had to clean up her stuffs and give away many of her belongings. And I found it really sad that there are so many of her stuffs that she never got to use because she kept it for special occasion, and she never were willing to part with them. Like my parents, they move houses, and she dragged them in boxes and find places to keep them from one house to another, and never got to use them. And even more sad, I think, is when I try to offer those uh, possessions of hers to people who I thought might need it. Not so many want it. Like people accept it, but it's not because like, oh, it's a very good thing just because it's free. Like, okay, I will just take it. Maybe they will give it away to someone else, and I don't know. Like even her jewelries, me and my siblings, we don't want them. So like all these earthly possession that were very precious for her, it becomes just something that we have to sort out after her passing away. And that's really an eye-opener for me, an eye-opening moment where I was like, I don't want to be a trouble when I pass away and someone else has to take care of my earthly possession. And there's this term, Swedish death cleaning. You can Google that. It's about like a practice that people do in Sweden to do a purging, like to clean up their stuffs once in a while to get ready for the day when one day they died, so they will not trouble anyone to clean up after them, or they will not humiliate themselves if someone finds something that is not for them to see. Anyway, so that is the background story of my journey, my personal journey of minimalism. Now, if we move forward to the deeper question about what does minimalism has to do with my faith, my spirituality, then I will say that it is a request, a humble request for us to detach from material possessions. And it is literally written everywhere in the Bible and shown in many examples of the spiritual people of the church in history. I mean, like intuitively, we will also respect a leader. They don't have to be a church leader. Even like your political leader, we will tend to respect more those who live a simple and humble life rather than the one who live a lavish lifestyle with material abundance and possessions. I mean, like, yes, we respect people who have the power, like the means to enjoy life abundantly, but it's not like the display of it, like display of this luxurious lifestyle. It's not something that is demand respect. It doesn't make us want to respect them. Like we respect them more if they live a simple lifestyle. And as church leader, me as a pastor who live in a big city like Jakarta, and also like I serve in a congregation where most of my members are coming from the upper middle class, I never experienced being looked down because of my clothes or what I wear. If anything, I feel like it makes them focus on the message that I have. Maybe they will comment about my hairstyle, like if I change my haircut or something, but I don't have to deal with the focus on my clothes, on my appearance. And because I spoke out about being a minimalist, so they also understand that. So they're not trying to push me like to wear something fancy or anything like that. So I think whatever your profession is, if you really have something good to do, like a good message, then living a voluntary, simple life, it creates more respect from others, at least in that department. Of course, you also have to have your integrity, your character in different department of life, but at least on that department, then you already gaining people respect. And yeah, furthermore, being a minimalist means that we choose to have less, not because we are lacking, not because we have this mentality of lacking, like, oh, I don't have this, I have to save money, I have to tighten my belt, this kind of thing. But it's more because we are detaching ourselves from earthly possession and from worldly identity. We are not associated with what we have, what we drive, what we wear. And thus it gives us the ability to live freely and also to be more generous. Because once again, living a voluntary simplicity doesn't mean that you don't have the mean to own good stuffs or a lot of stuffs, but you just choose not to. And the mean, which is the money, you can use it for other things, for other good cause, to bless others, like instead of to bless the store owner, which is also of course good, but I will talk about that a bit later. So I have to say that in many cases, minimalism indeed is a privileged thing. It's a privileged move in a capitalist society. It's as if it is said like, of course you can be a minimalist because you don't have to prove yourself to be accepted in the society. In this case, my privilege maybe is my profession as a pastor. So like they don't expect pastor to use fancy handbags, so they will welcome me in their house, they will invite me to dinner, not because of any of that. But maybe if you start doing business, like you start creating networking with others, then you need to have that. But so remember that like everyone wants to be in a privileged situation, right? Like with our heart to those who are marginalized, with our preference for the poor, still, like it's a blessing as well to be able to have the privilege and choose not to abuse that privilege, but to use it as a blessing. So what I'm saying is, like, if you think you need to have that fancy car, that fancy clothes, fancy bag to be accepted, then you're still not there. And you don't have to be super rich to be there. You can be voluntarily live a simple life and focus on what's inside of you, so that people can see your worth as you, not on what you have. I hope I make sense in this thing. So basically it is indeed a privilege. I will not say it is not, but it can also be a move from us who maybe don't have the privilege to liberate ourselves from the society's dictation of what should be our necessity. And in terms of global inequality among nations, minimalism, or let's say a curated life, an edited possession, can also be a way to have our valid independence economically and politically. This is what Mahatma Gandhi did with his non-cooperation movement, which are known as Satyagraha and Swadeshi. So with people buzzing about this brand, that brand, you have to own the latest technology, etc. Like you have to drive a Tesla perhaps, or I don't know what is trending in your part of the world. But when you live a minimalist life, a voluntary simplicity, then you are liberated. You don't have to chase all those things that the society, the capitalist society, dictate you to have. As if like without that then you're not successful, without that then you fail in life. And in practical sense, we really do not need that much to enjoy this life itself. Life is simple. It's our ambition and pride that makes it complicated and difficult. Life is simple. Like, as long as you're in a like you're healthy, you're in a good shape, you live in a peaceful country, that's also another privilege, then life is there to be enjoyed. Life is there to be enjoyed by everyone, so we have to keep the peace and everything. But life is simple and it is here for us to enjoy. And so in practical sense, there are also many advantages of being a minimalist. So first of all, like if you have less stuffs, then you need less space to keep your stuffs, to keep your things, right? You don't need a big wardrobe, which means you don't need a big bedroom, which means you don't need a big house. And then it means that you don't need that much money to spend on rent or mortgage or buying a house or electricity bills. And you also don't need that much time to clean your space, or you don't need to pay for someone to clean your space because it's too big for you to clean yourself. So there will be less stress, less quarrel among partners, among family members about who has to clean what. Because like I live now in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it takes me only 5 to 10 minutes to clean the whole space. To do deep cleaning, perhaps a half an hour or an hour if I'm into it, but I have more freedom and less stress to keep this place tidy and neat. And when you decide to have less stuffs, then you will have less stuffs because stuffs beget stuffs. Like for instance, if you buy shoes, then you will need another stuff, which is a shoe rack to keep your shoes. If you buy kitchen utensil, then you need a bigger counter space. And if you buy an oven, you might also need like an oven tray, and then you need a hand mixer and a food scale, etc., etc. Like for me, buying cake once in a while makes more sense than for me to invest in buying an oven and all those kitchen utensils. But of course, it is different if you do like to bake, if that's your passion, your hobby, and you're good in it, and you do it often. And even like it even makes more sense if you make a living by baking. That will be like books. For me, I have books because I'm a theologian, so I do need books. Or maybe musical instruments if you're a musician. So to each their own, but the point is like you don't have to have all the stuff that everyone is having now, just because everyone is having, just because it's the trend, or just because like society says like in your kitchen you need to have this and this and this. Like you do your own, like you create your own life. You are the curator of your life. You are your own editor. And like the logical consequence, with less stuff to obtain, then you will have more financial freedom, which means you can do more things you like to do, or you can choose to do less things that you don't want to do. Like if your boss asks you to do an extra time and you don't want to do it, maybe you can say no because you don't really need that extra money. But like it has to do also with your greed, like the feeling of contentment and know when enough is enough. But of course, it's different when you really need the money to pay the bills because you buy the things that you don't need to impress the people you don't like or like you. So that's also another cause. And with that being said, you also have more time to spend with the people you do like, or like with doing other things that you want to do for your hobby, for your ministry, for your family. And it also means that you are freed from this comparison game, like keep up with the Jonases, because you simply don't care about this comparison game. It also frees you to befriend people who you really like for their personality, not because of their social status, of what they wear or where they hang out. Because like it's not only minimalism. I know it's being a minimalist, you can still eat in a fancy restaurant. That's a different thing. But sometimes when you live a simple lifestyle, when you choose minimalism as a voluntary simplicity, then you also start to see those fancy activities as something that just activity that you will do if you like it, but you will not do it because it's a trend. So it becomes your mental state, your perspective, your worldview. And like by freeing yourself from this comparison game, you will have less worry. Also because like as Jesus said, where your possession is, that's where your heart is. So living a simple life is also good for your mental health. And as the opposite of people's assumption that if you're a minimalist then you cannot be hospitable because you only have two sets of plates and you don't have any extra bedding in your house, so you cannot accept a guest. That's not really true. Like, because once again, minimalism is not the same for everyone. It has to be adjusted with your life situation, with your social context, and it's the opposite of that assumption. Being a minimalist makes you more hospitable. At least that makes me more hospitable, because like, my house is free for anyone who wants to come, because there's nothing too precious to be worry about. Like, if someone break my plates, it's okay, because it's a cheap plate. Like, I can just get another plate, like, and it doesn't have to be in uniform. I mean, like, I like things to be looking good and nice, but it's not really that big of a deal. And if someone come and like, maybe they have this kind of tendency to steal something, there won't be nothing much to steal. And if there's something to steal, like, it's not something that I will cry about. It might be hurt my feelings, because like, I trust you and then you harm me, like you steal something from me. Maybe that's more like that kind of issue. But in terms of worldly material possession, it's okay, So, and also, like, it makes you more hospitable. Your house is more open, as apart from the pandemic situation in your country. And it is also better for the environment in general when we stop acquiring stuffs, because the environmental cost for production is huge, not to mention the transportation cost, the distribution environmental cost. And most of the stuffs that we buy, it becomes so cheap nowadays, like, it becomes cheaper and cheaper, so we buy easily. And especially with online shopping, we just one click away from buying stuffs. Most of the stuff that we acquire, because it's easy come, and it becomes also easy go. There's a study said, like, only in 6 months, even less than 6 months, the stuff that we buy from a store or online shop become a trash in 6 months. So we have environmental issue with the production and distribution, and not to mention the packaging. And now we also have this issue with this trash, with this landfill. We thought we donate it to the Goodwill, or like, someone who needs it, but like, there's too many. Like, even the Goodwill, the Salvation Army, they have too many donations that nobody really needs it at the first place. And so, does it mean that minimalism then it is bad for the economy? So, but again, like, it's a classic question between economy and environment. And like, which one do we have to choose? It's always the environment. Choose environment if you have to choose between environment or economy, because economy in that dilemma will only be a short-term advantage, but the loss in environment will be a long-term loss. So always choose the environment. And also, because we cannot buy oxygen if it's polluted and contaminated. So please, to answer that classic question, but also to answer the question, is minimalism bad for the economy? No, it's not, because according to another study, people spend their money not in buying stuffs. I mean, like, they spend that, but the bigger portion is not in that. It's more in dining out, grocery, insurance, transportation, rent, or mortgage, or like the house cost. And so, if we change the stuff buying into obtaining experience, like, to learn something, to educate ourselves with the extra time that we have when we don't have to make extra money to buy the stuffs and to keep them clean, the economy will still go around. Just like me, I'm instead of buying an oven and hand mixer, I decided just to buy a cake, and I can buy a very delicious cake, which for sure is not a failed attempt of baking. And money wise, I don't have to spend too much money as well, because you don't need to eat cake that often, so you only need to eat cake once in a while as well. It's not good for your health. So anyway, in this in what I'm saying is, no, minimalism is not bad for the economy. So minimalism, let me close with this quote from the Bible, from the First Timothy 6 verse 6 and 8. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with it. With that, minimalism is not about how many stuffs you are allowed to have in your house, or whether or not you can have a house. That's not about counting possession. No. Minimalism is about our spiritual journey to detach ourselves from the things that never define our being as human, to liberate us ourselves from this identity shaping that is dictated by a society that is not based on God fearing. Minimalism is about this freedom to find what is important in our life and to focus in building our being, our character, to make space for generosity and hospitality in our life. And you know, like, minimalism is, for me, it's a God way to tell me how to enjoy life with no worry, and to be able to be generous to help others who are in need. I hope this talk helps you in your discussion today and in your class, and I wish you nothing but the best in your study, in your calling, and hopefully one day we all can see each other face to face. God bless you.